I always believed that trust, once built, was as sturdy as stone. I spent years constructing a life around that belief, certain that my wife, Emily, and I shared something unbreakable. We had seen the world together, almost every country, every culture, every experience. Our ritual was simple: every time we arrived somewhere new, she would take a day to explore on her own, absorb the culture in her own way, and then tell me all about it over dinner. I thought it was charming. I thought it was just her way of connecting with the world. I was a fool. It was only yesterday that I returned home from our latest trip, this time to Barcelona. I was jet-lagged but content, looking forward to unwinding in our house, reminiscing about the beautiful city and the memories we had made. But then I heard it, a simple, offhand comment from Emily's best friend, Madison. "Come on, you had it with Amigo too. Wow, you've really added to the collection." I wasn't even meant to hear it. I was just passing by the hallway when those words slid under the door, reaching me like a whisper from the depths of my worst nightmare. I hesitated, my mind scrambling to make sense of it. Added to the collection? What did that mean? I shook it off. It had to be a misunderstanding. Maybe they were talking about souvenirs, maybe some inside joke. But something about Madison's tone, half laughter, half disbelief, lodged itself in my brain like a splinter. That's when I walked into our bedroom and noticed something I had never paid attention to before. The closet door was slightly open, just enough to see a stack of neatly folded photographs resting inside. At first, I smiled. I assumed they were pictures from our travels, little snapshots of the places we had been together. But as I reached for the top one, my heart stopped. The photo was of Emily. Naked. And she wasn't alone. There, beside her, was a stranger. A different man. And in each photo I pulled from the stack, there was a different face, a different country, but always the same woman, my wife. My vision blurred. My hands trembled. My breath came in shallow gasps as I flipped through the images. France. Italy. Japan. Brazil. All the places we had been. All the places where, while I was exploring the museums, the markets, the architecture, she had been collecting something else entirely. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the photos apart, to storm into the next room and demand an explanation. But a colder, darker part of me stopped myself. No. If she had been deceiving me for years, I wouldn't just be another fool who exploded in a fit of rage. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing my pain. Instead, I would plan the most meticulous, devastating revenge in the world. She had her collection. Now, I would start mine. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the photos, my pulse hammering in my ears. Time felt frozen, yet my mind was racing. Every memory, every conversation, every intimate moment replayed itself in my head, now tainted with a sinister truth I had never suspected. Emily had been cheating on me for years. And she had been so meticulous, so careful, that I never saw a single crack in the illusion she crafted. I placed the photos back exactly as I had found them. If I was going to get my revenge, I couldn't let her suspect anything. She had played me like a fool for too long, now it was my turn to play a role. So, when I stepped out of the bedroom and saw Emily sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, I forced a smile. I kept my voice steady. "Hey, babe," I said, walking toward her, pressing a casual kiss to her forehead. She looked up, surprised. "You're finally up," she said with a small chuckle. "I was just about to order dinner. Feel like Thai?" Thai. The same food we had eaten in Bangkok, where she had probably added yet another man to her collection. My stomach churned. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and nodded. "Sounds perfect." As she tapped on her phone to place the order, I sat beside her, watching her carefully. The woman I had loved, the woman I had traveled the world with, was right there beside me, laughing at something on her screen. She looked the same. She still had that soft smile, that playful glint in her eyes. But now, I saw something else. A stranger. I forced myself to act normal through dinner. I listened as she talked about Barcelona, about how much she loved the architecture, the culture, the food. I nearly laughed. She was a master storyteller, weaving a picture of our trip so perfectly that if I hadn't seen those photos, I would have believed every word. But I had seen them. And now, I knew that every trip, every solo exploration she took, was a lie wrapped in romance. When we finished eating, Emily yawned and stretched. "I'm exhausted. I think I'll head to bed early." I nodded, watching her disappear into our bedroom, the same room where I had just uncovered the biggest betrayal of my life. But I wasn't ready to sleep. Not yet. I needed a plan. Emily had spent years perfecting her deception. It was time for me to do the same. So, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started typing. This wasn't just revenge. This was going to be justice. I barely slept that night. Lying next to Emily, listening to her slow, even breathing, I felt an unbearable rage boiling inside me. But I kept my breathing steady, my body still. If she could pretend for years, I could do it for a little while longer. Morning came, and I slipped out of bed before she woke up. I needed to clear my head, to be away from her while I put the first steps of my plan into motion. At the kitchen table, I pulled out my phone and made a list. Step 1, gather more evidence. The photos were damning, but I needed more. Proof that would leave no room for doubt. If I wanted to destroy her life as thoroughly as she had destroyed mine, I had to be meticulous. Step 2, make her feel safe. She couldn't suspect anything. The worst thing I could do was give her a reason to panic and cover her tracks. I had to be the same devoted husband she had always known, until the moment I was ready to strike. Step 3, ruin her, completely and irreversibly. I wasn't going to just confront her. That would be too easy. Too fast. No, I wanted her to experience the slow, creeping realization of everything slipping away. The way I had when I found those photos. But first, I had to act normal. Emily came into the kitchen, still drowsy, her hair messy from sleep. She smiled at me, pressing a light kiss to my cheek as she grabbed a coffee mug. "You're up early." I smiled back. "Just thinking about our next trip." Her eyes lit up. "Oh. Where to?" I took a sip of my coffee, watching her over the rim of my mug. "I was thinking somewhere new. Somewhere neither of us has been before." That part was a lie. I already knew exactly where I wanted to take her. A place from our past. A place where she had added another man to her collection. And I was going to make sure it was the last trip she ever took. For the next few days, I played my role flawlessly. I was the same loving, affectionate husband she had always known, no, even better. I asked her about work, listened intently when she spoke, even surprised her with little gestures of affection. A morning coffee. A small bouquet of flowers. A casual, "I don't know what I'd do without you." She didn't suspect a thing. If anything, she seemed relieved. Maybe she had been worried that I'd overheard Madison's comment. Maybe she had sensed something different about me that night. But as the days passed and I acted like nothing had changed, her guard lowered again. She laughed more. She kissed me longer. And every time she touched me, I fought the urge to recoil. She thought everything was fine. She thought she had gotten away with it. She was so wrong. I started with her phone. Emily wasn't careless, far from it. But even the most careful liars slip up eventually. She had a habit of leaving her phone charging in the kitchen overnight. And I had long ago memorized her passcode. The first night I accessed it, my hands were shaking. Not from nerves, but from the anticipation of what I would find. And within minutes, my suspicions were confirmed. She had hidden everything in a separate folder. There it was. A folder labeled Itinerary, filled with hidden photos and messages from different men. Different names. Different locations. Barcelona. Tokyo. Paris. Rome. Everywhere we had been together. She had saved everything. Every filthy secret. Every moment of betrayal. And I copied it all. The text messages were the worst. Men telling her how much they missed her. How they couldn't wait until she came back. Some of them even knew about me. Your husband doesn't suspect a thing, does he? Can't believe you still pull this off. A different guy in every city. You're a legend. When are you leaving him? That last one made my blood run cold. Was she planning to? Had I just been a placeholder until she found someone worth settling down with? I clenched my jaw, breathing through the fury. No. I wasn't going to spiral. I was going to stay focused. I copied every message, every photo, and sent them to a private email account I created just for this purpose. She was never going to see it coming. Now, I just needed the perfect moment to strike. And I knew exactly when and where it would be. Emily had always been the one to plan our trips, but this time, I insisted. Let me surprise you, I said with a wink. She loved the idea. I booked the tickets, the hotel, everything. A trip back to the place where it all started. The first country we had visited together. The place where she had started her collection. And this time, I was going to make sure she left with something she would never forget. Her entire world, crumbling at her feet. The countdown had begun. Emily had no idea that the trip I planned wasn't for pleasure, it was for punishment. I chose Paris. It was the first country we had visited together, the place where our tradition of solo cultural exploration had begun. Back then, I thought it was innocent. Thought it was just her way of experiencing the world in her own unique way. Now I knew better. Paris wasn't just our first trip. It was her first betrayal. The first time she had slipped away under the guise of exploring, while I wandered the streets alone, blissfully unaware of what she was really doing. This time, she wouldn't be the only one with secrets. Paris, she gasped when I revealed the tickets. Oh my God, that's perfect. I was just thinking the other day about how much I missed it. I bet you were, I thought darkly. I smiled. I figured it was time we went back. Relive old memories. She threw her arms around me, kissing me deeply. I love you, she murmured against my lips. I almost laughed. Instead, I kissed her back. I love you too. And just like that, the final act was set. The plane ride. On the flight, Emily was practically glowing. She rested her head on my shoulder, sighing contentedly. I can't believe we're finally taking a trip where you planned everything, she teased. I chuckled. I wanted to make it special. Her fingers laced through mine. It already is. I turned to look at her, really look at her, and for a brief moment, I felt something crack inside me. I had loved this woman. More than anything. More than myself. And this is what she did to me. That flicker of doubt, that moment of weakness, vanished. I reminded myself what I had seen. The photos. The texts. The years of deception. No. She didn't deserve my hesitation. She deserved exactly what was coming. By the time we landed, I was ready. The trap was about to be sprung. The moment we landed in Paris, Emily was buzzing with excitement. She clutched my arm as we stepped off the plane, her eyes lighting up like they always did when we traveled somewhere new. But this wasn't new, this was where it had all begun. And this time, I was the one holding the secret. As we made our way through customs, I kept my mask firmly in place. I held her hand, smiled at her, played the perfect, adoring husband. She had no idea what was waiting for her. Outside, a car was already waiting. I had arranged everything in advance. The hotel. The dinner reservations. The final nail in the coffin. Paris was about to be her undoing. Checking in. The hotel was beautiful, of course. 5 stars, top of the line, just how Emily liked it. She marveled at the view from our balcony, stretching out her arms as if trying to take in all of Paris at once. "This is perfect," she sighed, turning to me with a soft smile. "You're spoiling me." I walked up behind her, wrapped my arms around her waist, and kissed her neck. "You deserve it," I murmured. She sighed happily, leaning into me. "I love you, baby." The words didn't even register anymore. I just smiled. "I love you too." Lies. The setup. That night, I took her to dinner at a small, romantic restaurant in Montmartre. Candlelit tables, soft music, expensive wine. The kind of place that made women feel cherished. She looked stunning across from me, her eyes twinkling as she lifted her glass. "To us," she said, smiling. "To us," I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. I watched as she sipped her wine, completely unaware of the storm about to hit her. As we ate, I guided the conversation exactly where I wanted it to go. "You know," I said casually, "I was thinking about our first trip here. You remember how you insisted on that solo day of exploration?" She laughed. "Of course. I always do that." "Right," I nodded. "You always did." She tilted her head. "Why do you say it like that?" I smiled, shaking my head. "No reason. Just, thinking about old memories." She relaxed again, twirling her fork in her pasta. "That was such a great trip," she mused. "Oh, I know," I said, leaning back in my chair. "You made so many memories." For the first time, I saw a flicker of hesitation in her expression. "Good. Very good." I glanced at my watch. It was almost time. The final piece of my plan was already in motion. And she had no idea. Tomorrow, her entire world would come crashing down. The next morning, I woke up before Emily. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart steady, my mind razor-sharp. Today was the day. I turned my head to look at her. She slept peacefully, her body tangled in the white sheets, her face soft, innocent. But I knew better. I slid out of bed carefully and walked to the balcony, letting the crisp morning air clear my thoughts. Down in the streets of Paris, the city was waking up, vendors setting up their carts, tourists wandering, lovers holding hands. It was the perfect day to destroy my wife. Emily stirred behind me, stretching. Morning," she mumbled sleepily. I turned, smiling at her. "Morning, beautiful." She grinned and patted the empty side of the bed. "Come back. It's too early." I chuckled. "We've got a busy day ahead." She groaned. Fine. What's the plan?" I leaned against the doorway, watching her. "I thought we could start with a little trip down memory lane." She raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh." I nodded. "You know, visit some of the places we saw on our first trip. Maybe even that little cafe you loved so much." Her face lit up. "I love that idea." Of course, she did. I needed her to love it. The walk into the past. We spent the morning visiting old spots. I let her reminisce, watching her carefully, studying every little reaction. We walked along the Seine. Stopped by the bookstore she had fallen in love with years ago. And then, we arrived at the cafe. The moment we stepped inside, I saw her hesitate. Her eyes flickered around the space, as if she was searching for something, or someone. I smiled. She remembered. We took a seat by the window, and I casually ordered for both of us. She fidgeted, playing with the edge of her napkin. "Wow, I forgot how much I loved this place," she said. "Did you?" I asked, tilting my head. She gave me a quick glance. "Of course." "Why?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice just slightly. "I was just wondering if it's because of the atmosphere, or the company you kept here." Her smile faltered. It was quick, but I caught it. She laughed, shaking her head. "What are you talking about?" I kept my expression light, playful. "Oh, nothing. Just a thought." She laughed again, but this time, it was forced. And then, he walked in. The ghost of her past. I had done my research. I knew exactly where to find him. Pierre. The first man from her collection. The one she had been with all those years ago, in this very city, in this very cafe. And right on cue, he stepped inside. Tall. Handsome. And completely unaware of the storm he had just walked into. Emily stiffened. That was all the confirmation I needed. She immediately reached for her coffee, taking a slow sip, but her fingers trembled around the cup. I leaned back in my chair, smiling. "Small world, huh?" She forced a chuckle. "Yeah, weird." I turned my head and casually waved Pierre over. Emily nearly choked on her coffee. Checkmate. Emily's face drained of color as Pierre walked toward our table. Her fingers gripped the edge of her coffee cup so tightly I thought it might shatter. I took my time, letting the moment stretch. I wanted her to feel it, the creeping realization that her past had finally caught up with her. Pierre approached with an easy smile, completely oblivious to the tension radiating off my wife. "Excusez-moi," he said, his accent thick but charming. I could not help but notice. "Emily, is that you?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She was frozen, caught between shock and panic. I smiled, pretending to be pleasantly surprised. "Oh, you two know each other?" Pierre glanced at me, then back at Emily. We met years ago." I leaned forward, resting my chin on my hand. "How funny. Emily never mentioned you." Pierre chuckled, assuming this was all just an innocent coincidence. "Ah, well, it was a long time ago. A beautiful summer, no?" He smiled at her. Emily finally forced out a weak laugh. "Why yeah. Crazy running into you here." But I wasn't done. "Not yet." I gestured to the empty seat across from us. "Why don't you join us for a coffee? Catch up?" Emily shot me a sharp look, barely masking her desperation. "Oh, we really should get going." "Nonsense," I interrupted smoothly, waving Pierre into the chair. "It's not every day you run into an old friend in Paris." Pierre, still oblivious, sat down, grinning. This is nice. "So, Emily, tell me, how have you been?" I watched my wife struggle to keep her composure. She knew she was trapped. And I was just getting started. The unraveling. As the conversation continued, I guided it exactly where I wanted it to go. "So, Pierre," I said casually, swirling my coffee. "When exactly did you and Emily meet?" He smiled, thinking back. "Oh, must have been, 7 years ago?" He looked at Emily for confirmation. Her eyes darted to me, then back to him. "Yeah, something like that." I nodded. "That's funny. 7 years ago, we were actually here together. On our first big trip as a couple." Pierre's brow furrowed slightly. "Oh. I see." He turned back to Emily. "But you were traveling alone, no?" Emily flinched. I let the silence stretch, savoring every second. Pierre's confusion deepened as he glanced between us. "Wait, you two were already together?" I gave him a slow nod. Married, actually. His face dropped. Murd. Emily's breathing quickened. She was unraveling, right in front of me. I could see the panic in her eyes, the desperate calculations running through her head. Pierre shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know. She never said. Of course, she didn't, I cut in smoothly. That's kind of her thing. Emily's hand shot out, grabbing mine. Babe, let's go. Now. I didn't move. I just looked at her. Letting her see it in my eyes. I knew everything. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around my wrist. Please. I tilted my head. Why? Something wrong. Her entire body was trembling now. Pierre stood abruptly, clearing his throat. I should go. He looked at Emily with something between disappointment and disgust. I'm sorry. And just like that, he was gone. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Emily's breath was shaky as she turned to me. What was that? She whispered. I took one last sip of my coffee, set it down gently, and smiled. Oh, sweetheart, I said, leaning in. That was just the beginning. Emily's hands were shaking now. Her breathing had become shallow, uneven. I could see it, the realization sinking in, the walls closing around her. I leaned back in my chair, watching her crumble in real time. Are you okay, babe? I asked, voice dripping with false concern. She blinked rapidly, forcing a weak smile. I don't know what just happened. I arched an eyebrow. Oh. You don't remember Pierre? She swallowed hard. I mean, of course I do. But I didn't know he was going to be here. It's just a crazy coincidence. I let out a soft chuckle. Right. A crazy coincidence. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Just like Barcelona. Tokyo. Rio. Her whole body stiffened. I saw the exact moment she knew. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She was trapped. I took out my phone, turned the screen toward her, and scrolled through the photos. Each one. Every single betrayal. Every man. Her face went pale. I tilted my head, smiling. You have quite the collection. She reached for my phone, but I pulled it away. I teased. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Tears welled in her eyes. How did you? I shook my head. Does it really matter? She covered her mouth with a trembling hand, her whole body visibly shaking now. Please, we can talk about this. Just not here. I leaned in. Oh, we're going to talk about it. Right here. Right now. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She was teetering on the edge of a full-blown panic attack. But I wasn't going to let her escape this moment. You know what the funniest part is? I mused, stirring my coffee lazily. I actually believed you loved me. I thought we were happy. I thought we were partners. I let out a hollow laugh. Meanwhile, you were out there, screwing your way across the world. She wiped at her eyes. It wasn't like that. Oh. I cocked my head. Then tell me, Emily. What was it like? She sniffled, her shoulders shaking. I don't know. It started as, she hesitated, choking on the words. I never meant for it to happen this way. I gave her a slow, deliberate nod. But it did. She reached for my hand, desperation in her eyes. I love you. I stared at her for a long moment. And then, I laughed. It wasn't just a laugh. It was cold. Empty. Final. Her face crumbled. Emily, I said softly, pulling my hand away. You don't love me. I shook my head. You never did. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because she knew I was right. She had built a life with me. Built a lie with me. And now, it was all crumbling around her. I stood up, throwing a few bills on the table. Enjoy the rest of your trip, I said calmly. She looked up at me, completely broken. Wait, where are you going? I smiled. A real smile this time. To start my new life, I said simply. And then, I walked out. And left her to drown in the ruins of everything she had destroyed. I walked out of that cafe without looking back. The moment my feet hit the pavement, I felt it, the weight lifting off my shoulders. For years, I had been unknowingly carrying her lies, dragging them through every country, every memory, every supposed moment of love. But now, she could carry them alone. I made my way to the hotel, moving with a steady calmness that felt almost unnatural. Inside, I rode the elevator up to our suite, stepped inside, and looked around one last time. This had been the place where I was supposed to create new memories with my wife. Instead, it had become a graveyard of our marriage. I didn't pack much. Just the essentials. She could keep the rest. Before leaving, I took out my phone and sent her a single message. Check the hotel front desk. There's something waiting for you. And then, I walked out. The last nail in the coffin. At the front desk, I had left her a package. Inside was a neatly bound folder filled with everything. The photos. The messages. Copies of every hotel reservation, every name, every secret rendezvous she thought she had erased. And on the very last page, divorce papers. Signed. Sealed. Ready. A note clipped to the front read. You've collected enough. Now, it's my turn. I'm collecting my freedom. No threats. No dramatic accusations. Just the cold, hard truth. She would open that folder and see her entire world collapse in front of her. And I wouldn't be there to watch. I hailed a taxi, directing the driver toward the airport. The sun was setting over Paris, casting the city in gold. For the first time in years, I felt light. No more pretending. No more lies. No more Emily. Just me. And wherever the hell I wanted to go next.